Hello and welcome back to another mix demo. This is episode 3, Life Like Water. Their song is entitled A Hole in the Sky. That's the single that I'm producing. Pretty groovy, catchy song with some Middle Eastern guitar parts, some trippy slide pedal steel guitar, some cool bass with plenty of inversions and some interesting hand percussion stuff. So you can see all of that's pretty much laid out over here on the left. I'm going to try and hustle through this. My last episode was almost 2 hours long. That's too long. Nobody wants to watch that. This mix also, they're getting easier and easier. As we went, we comped and chose the best takes. There's always a time factor of having other projects take precedence, it being a couple of months before I get back to start these. Luckily, I didn't have to obsess over which takes to use. So that part was pretty much done. What I did was come in here and, of course, got right to the percussion part and sent the kick, quote-unquote kick. He's playing a cajon. So there was a mic on the back that gave us more of this sound, and a mic on the front to capture the backbeat, along with the subtleties of his ongoing 16th notes or whatever. So I call this quote-unquote kick and snare, even though it's really the same instrument that he's hitting. He's got cymbal, and then I did a parallel compressed in the box digital, another cymbal, kind of fatten that up. And we've got the overheads, which I kept pretty clean. All of this so far I've kept pretty clean. It's a real acoustic sound. Let's listen to a little bit of it. So, yeah, I didn't want to go too overboard right off the bat with over-processing it, right? So the overheads of the drums, very clean. This quote-unquote kick is heavily processed to boost that bass, right? We're always looking to hit the sub. So this and the stand-up bass got pretty lifted there in the low end using my Moog EQ 4M. This is sort of a combination of phase 1 and phase 2. So in my other episodes and generally my process, phase 1, we're going to be choosing the right takes and lining everything up properly, checking phase issues to see if a mic is farther away, it might be a few milliseconds behind another mic, which might cause phase issues. So lining up the sound waves to eliminate those phase issues, very important. Also, matching the levels if there are multiple mics. So on all of these, there are multiple mics. We've got the guitar that the singer is playing, both dry and his pedal board. We've got 4 microphones on the pedal steel guitar. He brought his amp, so put a 57 and a ribbon mic on it. Tried to capture his instrument, a mic directly on the pedal steel, dry, and his board. Bass, we got ribbon mics placed along the bass. I think one was kind of up where the neck meets the body. One was a little lower, so a little bassier. Then the RE mic, I forget where I had placed that, but the RE is just great at capturing low end. So that was one of the main mics that I ended up using. I think a room mic with the TF and his DI. So balancing all of this stuff, really intuitive, listening to each one and finding the one I think that just at first blush sounds best and then blending the other ones into those. I didn't really find much redundancy. I thought using so many mics on a stand-up bass, for instance, that I might end up not using one, but even if I don't want it to be obvious, I mean, so his DI, right, is still getting a little bit of attack from that, but that's pretty low in comparison to the other ones. Same with the room mic, which is giving it a little bit of space. All kept mono for that one, although the pedal steel got some stereo on it. The guitar over here is muted, so that's not actually the guitar. We've got the guitar processed here, and that means that this stuff is the guitar. A little bit of stereo on the guitar as well. I reamped it before sending it into the processing. You can see the balance of the drums here. There are so many drum channels because we got extra takes of a cymbal here. Oh, that's chime. So chime and then this cymbal. So put those on different channels so I could, you know, process them however I want, even if they're multiple mics. So kept the overheads for this cymbal. Same for the chimes, looks like. Multiple chimes, and really panned those to each side. This cymbal pans across, so that's another part of phase one, is kind of deciding some panning approaches. I think that's a really cool effect. Same with the chimes here. They kind of open up as they go. And the voice, not much to do on phase one. It's mono, of course, and simplified. Unlike my album where I recorded my voice with 5 microphones, that was pretty dumb. This, I got a really nice mic, the Miktek CV4, a tube microphone going into a nice preamp, the Neve 5211. Now might be a good time to show a lot of this gear. My rack overviewed a lot of the recording process here. When I was reamping the guitar, I added a stairs mic. I love doing that for some natural reverb. And one effect, I think this is some drive, the MXR chorus pedal and the Moogerfooger phaser. But I believe it's pretty low in the mix at the moment. Yeah, barely audible. So I could boost that. Got some notes back from the band already, from the band leader, David. Yeah, he wants a little bit more grittiness in the guitar, more percussion, more bass, a couple other notes here. So this is far from over, and I've only talked about phase one. When it comes to phase two, I'm using some of this gear. Let's get... So, of course, we've got an EQ, the Neve 8803, Distressors, EQ4M, and the master bus processor. That's my analog chain. And here we've got, you know, my interfaces and some preamps, the API, the Millennia, the 5211. Got an effects rack, some miscellaneous pedals on top there, but all the Minifoogers and Moogerfoogers. The amp that I used to reamp, that's a 57 custom twin Fender tube amp. Some synths, I don't think that those will get any play on this album. And then we've got some mics that were used, not pictured. I'll end up using this SSL, these faders to real-time record some volume automation. And I'll use the BigSky for some reverb. That's the gear that's being used. And in phase two, I used it. I set up this main mix here, and that's what we were listening to at the beginning of the video. The work of the earth to hold and to offer. The work of the law to claim and divide. Yeah, there you go. Sounds like I put some reverb and delay on the vocals, but that's not final. Haven't done the effects yet. That's phase 3 and phase 4, mastering it. But as I went through phase 2, I preserved this dry mix. So all the channels after processing, I slid down here, and it's all going to a dry mix. Whereas post-processing, it's going to the buses. You can see that this is processed, so I've recorded that. And these buses go to the main mix. So we can listen to the main mix versus the dry mix. Let's do that. We'll start with the dry mix, and then we will listen to the processed. So that's pretty cool. You know, the vocals are a little weaker, obviously, but I think that's most noticeable because that's the main focal point of this part of the song. But everything fits into place once you've EQ'd it together, added some compression to accentuate where it should be pumping or get it to play nice as you're kind of fitting it into the mix. Bringing up some of that quieter stuff to accentuate the character. You just get this impression of clarity, even though part of that process is adding saturation and distortion. So we could go bit by bit here. I'll just show soloed some of the cooler processing that happened, maybe without the before and after. Just we can check out the back of the cajon. I don't know if you can hear that unless you're listening with nice headphones or a sub or something. There's the front of the cajon that's been doctored quite a bit. Eventually comes in with a cymbal. And the overheads. One reason I did not, you may hear it back there, some faint guitar in the overheads. So that's one reason I didn't process the overheads too hard. Guitarist and the percussionist wanted to record together, so he DI'd the guitar, but you could still hear him playing acoustically across the room in the overhead. So if I compress that heavily, which I don't know why I would do that for overheads anyways, maybe a parallel compression situation, but we would have brought up the quiet guitar, and I guess that's no big deal because we've got the guitar in the song anyways, but maybe it's different takes being used. You know, they could fight each other. There could be phasing issues. So right now it's just way back there. Don't know if you can hear that, but yes, my studio is currently not set up for a whole band to record at the same time. There's no isolation, and so recording everything one at a time, which is time consuming, but I think it also provides the opportunity to get a perfect take. I think I really am of the mind that artists can convince themselves that a take was fantastic when it was not. Just as time consuming to have the whole band record together and then go part by part and double check that everything was as it should be. Whereas when you're recording everybody one by one, the pressure's on, they better get it right. Let's listen to the bass. Yeah, I was getting a little bit of a clacky sound on the bass from Ian. By the way, we had Ian on bass, we had Jackson Delaney on the pedal steel, Ian Wade, Jackson Delaney, and Charles, what was Charles's last name? and Charles Furtado on percussion. So Ian was giving me a bit of a clacky take, which could be the way that I set the mics up, and I was able to eliminate a lot of that with the distressors. I think I got a nice sound. I feel like bass is one of the most frustrating things for me to mix, because that growl, that bass guitar growl, or hear the stand-up sound is like so full and sweet. Either way, like just love the sound of bass. We all do. And unfortunately, the roll of the bass is that low end, and you lose a lot of the high end when everybody else comes in. So a lot of the character of the bass, of course, that's why you compress it so hard, because you're bringing up some of that quieter stuff. But even still, the most important thing is to get that lower octave to fill out the sound, and you lose some of the articulation and the swell of the bass when everything else is in.
Go down and fetch some water, come back and split the pie.
Now again, I had notes to turn up the bass and turn up the percussion, so that bass element, low end element in both will come up, and it'll be a little bit more aggressive sounding. I think that's good. I got some advice from an old jazz cat one time that you should feel the bass and not really hear it, and I think that's the case. The guitar, it sounds a lot grittier. It sounds more distorted when you're listening to it by itself. With everything else, it sounds quite flat.
Go down and fetch some water, come back and split the pie. This too's revolution.
What to say about the guitar? At this point, I had been mixing. I did all this in one big old 9-hour day or something. So the guitar was one of the last things that I did, and I actually had to do it a couple of times, missing a couple of settings on the analog chain. And that's a danger. I guess I talk in these mix demos about the imperfection that has to be embraced because of the lack of time. I'm doing these projects as a trade with the band, an opportunity to practice my stuff, build skills with my new gear since the upgrades last year. So this is some pro bono work, so to speak, and I only have so long that I can dedicate to it. With this guitar, I had his dry signal, his pedal board, and then I reamped it, so I sent it out through the tube amp and captured that with a 57 and a ribbon mic. And that 57 does not play nice. So you hear it breaking up. So I believe that 57 ended up pretty low in the mix. Yeah. But always better to go a little bit too low than a little bit too high, right? And this stuff becomes really permanent when you run it through the analog gear. So you've got this guitar now with that blend.
Breathe deep the luscious sky.
With a stairwell mic. Which I should get an EQ on. And these effects. Which I captured pretty hot. They're not quite peaking, but might redo this one.
The work of the law to claim and divide.
Yeah, so we have the guitar, then the pedal steel. Trippy instrument. So the next phase is to add effects, and we'll see if I can bring out that trippiness. The whole song has this kind of spiritual nature to it. Definitely don't want the effects to go overboard. I think there could be a danger of a redundancy, maybe, or a silliness, a kitsch feeling, I think, of too many wacky effects going on. But I think certainly there's an opportunity to stack them and build some tension. There is this pretty metal part. It goes into 7/8 a little later. But that's definitely the climax of the song, and getting a little metal there, I think, is going to be great. This is where it is for now. Phase 1 and Phase 2, check. I'll be back in the next video to talk about effects, get the volume automation going on, and just kind of finish up the mix before Phase 4, where I master it. Okay, here we go. I believe when I left off, I had just finished talking about the dry channels, all the mics that we had recorded with, and sending that through the analog gear. I really regret not showing that in real time. That would just be like a huge pain to edit together, showing the specific parameters of each analog device for the, how I'm using the chain on each source. But anyways, all of that is in the distant past now. I've gone through and added effects, and I've already gone through the mastering process too. So the finished product sounds like this.
Bound by greed without expiration. Blind to need like birds in the night.
That's hitting. It's pretty loud in my headphones. Of course, part of the mastering process is adjusting the perceived loudness in relation, in a balance with preserving the dynamics, the distance between the loudest sound and the softest sound. Want that contrast to be strong, but also want to squish it and pull it up to where it sounds super loud. So as you can see, that took me 5 shots and made it happen. So I'm going to mute that for now and go back to this main mix. Let's see if it's working.
Bound by greed without expiration. Blind to need like birds in the night.
Quite a bit quieter. Much quieter there. You may need to turn up your volume as we continue to explore here. I didn't do this video quite as close to finishing this up as I meant to, so I'll be remembering stuff as we go here. The last few tweaks were so minimal. I came in and pulled down the bass by just like half a decibel. I pulled up the vocals a bit. Maybe we can look at that when I talk mastering. But before that, there were these bigger changes adding effects to each voice. So let's start with the voice itself. This is the original voice.
A hole in the sky for each generation. Lost in thought and paid to close our eyes.
First of all, I added some reverb through the Strymon BigSky MX, which, you know, it's a digital pedal. I use the actual pedal, so I've got some control over the knobs, but a digital version would probably work out. You know, inside the box would probably be just as good. Would love to get the Lexicon, PCM stuff. Haven't invested yet. So anyways, we've got a plate.
A hole in the sky for each generation.
Opening that up and then blended in some Hall on top of that.
A hole in the sky for each generation.
Yeah, a little bit of a longer tail there, opening it up even more. And then, you know, this singer specifically said that he wanted like just drenched in reverb. So we've got this bloom. And this one I played the fader. I rode the fader on this one, and you could see I'm bringing it in and out.
A hole in the sky for each generation. Lost in thought and paid to close our eyes.
Very cool. I think you get this like hush happening on it, and that just feels like another instrument almost in the context of the whole mix. Let's listen to that.
A hole in the sky for each generation. Lost in thought and paid to close our eyes.
I'll bring it out a little bit more.
Bound by greed without expiration. Blind to need like birds in the night.
Yeah, so hopefully you can hear that coming in. Now we've also got some in the box stuff happening. Plugins were used, just a good old de-esser, and could have used that inside this Nectar program, but I think I wanted the de-esser before the reverb, and I used this after I recorded the reverb, which I do believe this has its own reverb happening and a delay way down in the mix. All this stuff so subtle, you can see that the mix is very, very low on all this. A chorus, an EQ, giving him some body in the low end of his voice. Just a little bit of compression. Remember, I already did that with the analog chain. All this EQ and compression. So yeah, that's the voice. Mainly, the only effects are those reverbs. And at the end, sort of actually on the choruses, but so subtle you can't really hear it until the very end. We've got some doubles, that some other takes that he sang in the background.
This dude's revolution, this dude could change your mind.
And this slap delay, which is, it's low pass and high pass, and the left and right channels have different timing on the delays. A little teeny bit of lo-fi stuff happening, some distortion and saturation, and a little bit more saturation here, just to degrade that sound a little bit and take it away from the front.
This dude's revolution, this dude could change your mind.
So hopefully a subtle effect there that adds a little bit of gravity and width there, especially at the end for the very last line when we're finishing up the song. All right, let's get a move on. This video is going to be way too long. Low pass on the kick, that's pretty self-explanatory. It's not actually a kick, it's a cajon. So the original already had a lot of that low end information because I boosted it quite a bit in the analog chain. But even more low end, we're pumping. There's an envelope in the Moogerfooger 101 that's going to open up as that hits. Give it some more shape there. Now this one's pretty wild. Got some effects on the snare. Sounds totally wild by itself. That's the Freqbox, which has an oscillator track the incoming sound, and has another envelope this time on the pitch of that oscillator. It's going through another couple of effects. I don't know quite what. That Freqbox is the main one. I think maybe it's going into a flange or a chorus. The Clusterflux, I believe. You can see that it's stereo, so definitely getting the stereo effect out of that. By itself sounds nuts, but in the mix, it really helps kind of sharpen what I'm considering to be the snare. Again, it's the cajon. Let's listen. Okay, yeah, some wild stuff. And now you can see I'm kind of using it to bring out the backbeats here. Next, phaser on the cymbal. The best part of this was sort of an accident. You can see that the mic that's on the cymbal, I'm bringing in and out. He's not playing the cymbal throughout the song, but I feel as though it'd be a little too obvious to bring the mic in right when the cymbal hit. And it adds, since it's panned over to the side, kind of opens up the drum sound on our way to the cymbal each time. Now that's super subtle. Wouldn't expect to really hear that, but you can hear the cymbal hits. Hopefully it sounds a little less like it's coming out of nowhere. And then we've got the cymbal phaser, because I just love the phaser on cymbals. Brought it out a little bit there. So, like I said, this cymbal mic is capturing kind of his whole hand percussion set. It really comes into play on our way into the bridge over here. Let's see. That combined with the snare effects there just gives it this wild rush. Especially in the finished product, not hearing it up. It sounds like I'm about to be interrupted. Hey.
I thought you were talking to yourself.
Nope. Well,
You are.
Yeah. Okay, what was I saying? Let's listen to this master. Yeah, so you can hear that kind of settle in there. We really liked that so much that we tried to copy and paste it and have it carry throughout the bridge, but it just did not line up. The rhythm was a little loose there. So, yep, phaser on the cymbal, phaser accidentally catching that snare there. That's it, nothing on the overheads. We had this one moment with chimes. They gave me the chimes clean. So we have the original chimes. We have these other instances of chimes. And all of them together give us a wide picture of the chimes. And now we've also got the chimes, a little bit of a delay on the chimes. Again, a stereo delay with different times on each side. And if I'm not mistaken, oh, that's why we're not hearing it, because I muted it. There we go. Yeah, so that's so fun to have it sort of ping pong back and forth just for a moment. If you're listening on headphones, that's really pronounced. Let's talk bass. We've got that original bass. Now that's already a combination of 5 microphones that I check for phase issues. We're just going to get so much more color out of it once we add in some of this other stuff. The low pass filter, you see that's pretty uniform throughout the song, although with a couple of crescendos over there. So just the low pass. And that's with no resonance. So there is this wah wah. It's a slow envelope there on, again, the 101 low pass filter, the Moogerfooger. But really just capturing that low end. Then putting it through a drive pedal. Which on its own kind of does sound like garbage, but gives it a little bit more power together with the rest of it. Let's listen to just that. Yeah, I sort of process that drive, you know, in my mind as just like girth, like like grit at the bottom. It did get like an auto wah effect. So that really harkens to Les Claypool for me. And I'm bringing it in. It's pretty subtle because it's just one of 4 voices here, or 4 effects. But adds a little wet definition there and really comes into play in the crescendo. You know, I can always hear that in the mix. It kind of pokes out for me there, that auto wah. Let's see if we can track it. Yeah, you hear that right when I start it? Just I'm so proud of that little moment, this or something like that. I wish I could make it happen more, but it's just one of those really sweet, nice little moments. I'll back it up a little bit. Pretty sweet. I'm still listening to the master on for all of this stuff. Let's listen one more time without the master. Yeah, that's so good. Okay, so then we're moving down to the guitar. The guitar definitely had more work to get the tone that we kind of wanted. And it's tricky because there's slide guitar, there's a pedal steel guitar, and there's this main guitar riff. I didn't really want this main guitar riff to be very bright. I wanted it to be tucked in right above the bass. At the end of the process, during the mastering process, we're usually cutting some of that mud around like 300, but unfortunately that's exactly where I wanted this guitar to live. This song is in A, I believe, and so there's a lot of like drone notes at like 50, and for the guitar like 100, 200. So those overtones around, you know, that octave 200 and a little higher, that's still very, very low. And octave up from that 400, so now we're talking, you know, in that mid range is just hovering around that potentially muddy, problematic spot. Let's listen to just that guitar. The drone notes there. Ba bow. That's going to be at about 100. Which, of course, that's where the bass is living. You know, I'm really taking out a lot of that. Now, I will say, I think one of the mistakes that I made was that I am often prioritizing the dry signal. And because we recorded the guitar at the same time as the hand percussion, I couldn't record the amp as we went. And so this process signal is a combination of the dry signal and me reamping it. And I still made that dry signal the loudest thing. But that meant that I needed to come back. I changed my mind and I wanted more of the ribbon. So added back some more ribbon after the fact. This ribbon is capturing the tube amp and it's crunchier than the dry signal, of course, and in this processed part. And looking back, I should have made that just the primary thing with the dry signal very low, if any, right? Because I could just take that dry signal, run it through the amp, and then boom, that's what I've got. The sound that's coming out of the amp. That's what we really want to hear, ultimately. But getting more of that dry signal dulls it out. Maybe you hear a lot of the pick. But getting some more ribbon. The ribbon is bi-directional too, so more room sound whenever I'm adding more of the ribbon in, so more space. And then just really wanted more definition too, but again, not trying to get in the way with a bunch of overtones of other instruments. So added the 57, which is also on the tube amp back in, but this time with an octave on it. Very low. It's cool. Kind of its own effect too. I don't know what kind of effect you would call that. Maybe almost like a ring mod or something. But I'll bring that back into the fold here. And when it's all happening, you know, very, very subtle. There are a couple of parts I took it out so as to not distract when there's just solo guitar here. You could hear that octave at the end there. But that's not all. We still have the proper guitar effects, some overdrive. Let's go down and check out this overdrive. So of course we're getting some crunch. Now this is not the Moogerfooger or the Minifoogers drive, which is my favorite drive. I already used that as I was reamping. I captured this effects channel. And so this is like a combination of the Boss overdrive and the Tube Screamer, the Ibanez. You know, both super famous overdrive pedals, reliable. People all use them all over the place. Then we've got the delay. This is the Moogerfoogers 104 delay. It's adding a little bit of gain, distortion, and this maxes out at like, you know, 1500 hertz or something like that. So more low end warmth analog sound. This is a coveted pedal, the 104 Moogerfoogers. Then we've got this effects channel. Phaser, you can definitely hear that stereo phaser in there. Also, that Jimi Hendrix pedal MXR, chorus, and the Minifoogers drive there, giving it some more weight. And then the stereo microphone, natural reverb. Shoo, so let's put all of that together. And now you got a guitar sound. Now this was fun, you know, one of the blending them all in, you could see that there's a lot of movement in the volume automation, and I used 4 channels and sort of played it like an instrument. My UF8 SSL, like these faders. There are certain parts where I want kind of all of them to be crescendoing. There are parts where I want the effect to really come out. Creating some shapes, and this is around the singer. Kind of making it smaller and then creating more space by bringing that delay in. And in the context of the full mix, kind of got what I wanted.
Go down and fetch some water, come back and split the pie.
There's some definition, but also it's staying out of the way of the pedal steel and the singer, staying in the background. I had another producer friend say, like, this is the main riff of the song. It happens throughout this whole song. The whole song is this guitar riff. He's like, you should bring it way to the front. That's like the core of the song. But I'm of the belief that this guitar riff happens 1,000 times, right? So you hear it a couple of times, you hear it 4 times, 8 times, and you can assume that that part is still there. It works its way into the background.
A hole in the sky for each generation.
This sort of popcorn sound, you just hear the articulations in the background.
Lost in thought and paid to close our eyes.
So it's actually like this, it becomes this intricate, almost like tabla pattern, almost like a hand drum that has many notes that's being played with many different velocities because of the delays happening at different times. It's a cool effect. I'm happy about where I got that. The pedal steel guitar was way easier to add some effects to. I used the Avalanche here. So the original sound, although I will say one of the problematic parts of this was getting it to be less noisy. I had this hi-fi guy in here. He had a really nice amp, really nice instrument, and I made the mistake of he dialed it in where he wanted it, and I asked him to turn it up so it would hit the mics a little harder. I wanted to hit the preamps a little harder and get more saturation, but turning messing with his gain staging created a lot of noise in his setup. So that means a lot of noise reduction on the back end, and I wonder how much tone I lost by just using spectral noise reduction to get rid of like the hum and the hiss and the buzz. So that's a little troubling. Adding the Avalanche run, not troubling at all. It's very cool. You can see that it's just there on the whole time. This pedal is super cool. It's reverb and delay, and I guess it's like a feedback knob, the amount of repeats. And so when you want more of it, you could turn up that feedback, and it's just gonna create more repeats and kind of more of a pad. Let's listen. So I'm playing this, and when I feel like I want more, you can hear a lot of variation there. Another troubling aspect to this, and I've since made the fix in my studio, but I had no way to get I only had a reamp box, a mono reamp box, which means that I needed to reduce this down to mono from the stereo that I had created to process this through the analog chain. Because there were multiple mics on this too, so created a stereo spread, down into mono to put it into the Avalanche, a Walrus canvas reamp pedal to change the impedance to the proper level for the Avalanche to treat it like it's, an incoming guitar signal and not distort. The lesser of two evils was to not just have line ins, which might cause unwanted distortion, but rather to have one mono input of that fixed impedance coming in for the Avalanche pedal. Then the Avalanche's stereo reverb. So we get a different stereo image that is comprised of the mono being split into the algorithms of the pedal. It turned out okay. In the mix.
Lost in thought and paid to close her eyes. Bound by greed without expiration. Blind to need.
You could see in the automation of the slide, I really love like the end where it's kind of noisy. Let's see if I can find one of those spots.
Fetch some water, come back, split the pie.
That's a good example. So I just love like the kind of, what would you call it? The extreme, the end, the extension of whatever phrase he's playing.
Change your mind, change your mind. Climb up the highest mountain, breathe deep the luscious sky.
To me, that's the really capturing the idiosyncrasies of that instrument. Those little noises that the player might even be, self-conscious of. Oh, I want a smoother transition from this note to that note. But really the messiness in there is what I tried to pull out to give it a more natural sound. And this is a really natural sounding band, not getting too wild. Even when things get pretty crazy, still sounding pretty acoustic. Let's go back to listening to the master here. I'll talk about that a little bit. So in order to master it, I sent it through the 8803 Neve EQ. This is my analog chain, and pretty much just use that to scoop out some of the mids around 300. I sent it through the EQ 4M, boosted the lows, especially the sub. I had a hard time deciding what I was going to do at the 160 band, so I popped that up just like a half a decibel or something like that. Cranked down 650 up on 2.5, quite a bit, and then used that air band all the way at 40, up 3, maybe that's 3 decibels. So really pulling up the air on the high end and the sub. So smiley face. Then dialing in the Portico 2 master bus processor. I used the stereo field editor there to widen it and give it more depth, some mid-side processing there. Used the compressor pretty low, below 2, in terms of the ratio. Brought the threshold down until I was getting a couple of decibels of reduction. Although I had cranked up the quote unquote kick of the cajon, all this low end stuff, so that that was really hitting the compressor and limiter harder than anything else, which I don't really know what that means. I guess the quiet parts and the loud parts get squished together, right? So we're getting more of the quiet parts, especially of those bass hits, so more presence, I think, in general. And yes, I used the limiter, which has a soft knee. It's like this musical limiter that doesn't quite hard stop. But the real challenge was getting all of this to work for this kind of like build up. Everything, you could see so much volume automation is working its way up, whether it's in the main buses or effects like the snare effect you can see is coming up. All these bass channels are coming up all the way to this point, and so everything, all these guitar effects, everything's getting more and more intense during this breakdown. To the point that the songwriter actually asked me to tone it down a little bit. So I took the note, and you could see I created a little bit of a downward volume automation for the main mix that everything's going into. And between that, I had to find the sweet spot for bringing the entire volume of the main mix down. It comes up for choruses a little bit. And I'm bummed to see that I left off the last chorus, but this is a little louder than the bass line over here anyways. And we're on our way out, so a nice easy landing. But anyways, had to bring all of this down as sort of a volume trim. This is what fed into the analog chain. Bringing down the volume so that I'm not peaking anything on the way out, including this mix, as everything gets super loud here. And then bringing down the limiter, which again doesn't stop everything. Bringing down the limiter again so that I'm not peaking on the way back in here. So turning up the gain, finding that sweet spot between the makeup gain and the limiter on the master bus processor is a skill that I spent some time practicing and learning, and ended up with a nice middle ground. And because I spent time zeroing in on that, ended up not having to add too much after the fact, because it's already pretty loud. I had to add 6 decibels, so I guess that's pretty substantial. Let's go through here. Teensy bit of focus on the vocals. This is what I was talking about. Brought the low end down a little bit more. Multi-band compression, a little low end focus, tiny bit. A little bit more poppiness on the bass. Multi-band stereo width. I love this clarity module. It's like a dynamic EQ. Same with the stabilizer, but I don't like it as much. It gets really harsh really quick. So teensy bit of that. An actual dynamic EQ, one placed at 300, and the maximizer, I tend to turn down the upward compression a little bit, keep the character somewhere in the middle. And I do cycle through some of these to see which I like more. Sometimes crisp works, sometimes 2, and I often find myself using this modern. Maybe that goes well with the more modern choices on the Portico 2 master bus processor. I did add some silk. The red silk boosts some of the more of the higher overtones for a more modern, refined feel. I did also use Soothe 2. Small change to the rock and roll. I just cycled through some of the presets and maybe made some small tweaks. The most important one is turning the mix of this down. So, this is only ever hitting stuff at around 3 decibels max to soften it. And so we...
This two's revolution, this two could change your mind.
we end up with that final product. I hope this has been interesting at all for anybody to watch. And I believe that's it. Yeah, can't think of anything else that I want to talk about. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I've also got this room verb. So everything feeds into sort of this master verb, and it goes into the main mix alongside everything else and is part of the master too. It's funny. Did I mention this? It's worth pointing out that the room verb, it is low pass, so things don't get muddy. And the space that I chose, a forest, because they're sort of an earthy band. It's funny, somebody got some Impulse recordings from a forest, And that's the reverb that I'm using in the background here. That is a fun fact about this song. It's got some real forest vibes in it. All right, I'm Sam Irvin. This is the mix demo portion, phases 3 and 4, effects and mastering for Asheville Notes, episode 3, part 3, and hope you enjoyed it.